going back to that, it's story based. And here you've talked about a story, memorialize the story that's coming out of your company. Anytime you do that, those are moments that the media loves. And
Right.
I see a lot of charities who do releases about so much was raised, or a company that gave money to a charity. I hate to say it, but no one really cares about those, and they generally don't get picked up. And so I always tell people, make sure you get people's permission to do this, but share the experiences, the transformations you've made. We help like 40,000 people a year. It's like, people only care about the individual. Share one person's story. Take someone and share that story. And the ones that do very well, I get it that from the standpoint of the charity, you're wanting to share that you're helping a lot. But the best way to show that is to showcase and put the spotlight on an individual that you've transformed their life and what
Right.
you've done to them. Because again, it breaks it down to human interest, and we care about individuals. And we're not discounting any of the good that you do in aggregate, but we need to see it individually and personalized.
But I am the world's biggest super fan.
You're like a super fan.
Welcome to the Business Superfans Podcast. We will discuss how establishing business superfans from customers, employees, and business partners can elevate your success exponentially. Learn why these advocates are a key factor to achieving excellence in the world of commerce. We discuss the invaluable insights of business owners who have successfully implemented the strategies in the book to build their own team of devoted superfans. Gain insightful knowledge from the experts who create applications that help you create passionate superfans. This is the Business Superfans Podcast with your host, Freddy D.
Freddy!
Mickey Kennedy founded eReleases 25 years ago to help small businesses, authors, and startups increase their visibility and credibility through press release distribution. He lives in the Baltimore area. Hello, Mickey. Welcome to the Business Superfans Podcast Show. We're excited to have you on the show. We look forward to learning a little bit more about eReleases.
Glad to be here.
Tell us, Mickey, what's your story? Where did you come from, and how did you come up with eReleases? And what is eRelease, and how can businesses benefit from your platform?
Sure. So I guess around 28 years ago, I was working for a telecom research startup. I was employee number 3, and I had finished a master's of fine arts in creative writing, and all they knew was I could write. So they told me to write releases and send them to the media as part of many jobs you do working for a startup when there's just 3 of you. And I did that, and I inherited a Rolodex from my boss where I would fax these press releases. And it's a big time suck and very painful to have to fax 150 places with a press release. I did that, and not much happened. And the boss was like, oh yeah, I send releases, nothing ever happens. I was just like, why do we do it then? And they're like, I don't know. I think you just have to. I look at other people and they're doing it, so I do it. What I realized is that it's true. A lot of people send out releases and nothing happens. Probably 97% of press releases that go out today, including those that go over a paid newswire, don't generate earned media. That's what we call it when you get media pickup. Rather than accept that press releases didn't work, I made it my mission to figure out why they weren't working. And what I found is we weren't providing any context for it. We weren't telling a story. And what I saw looking at what people were writing, the actual journalists, that even in a small newspaper article or trade publication, the stories generally followed an arc, the traditional story arc that moves up and climax, and then it goes down. It's something that is innate in storytelling. A good joke follows that pattern. What we were told as children, bedtime stories follow that same arc, and journalists prefer to write that arc. And what we were providing, the raw data, it was not a lot for journalists to turn into a story. And so I took the latest release that we had done at that time, was talking about telecom traffic statistics between the US and Caribbean countries. And I looked at it and I noticed that one country accounted for more traffic than all the others. It was one of the smaller countries. And so I figured out why that was. I had to do more research because we didn't know initially ourselves. And it turns out that at the time, that country was like the 1-900 call center. And most 1-900 numbers in the US were rerouted through that country. So I published a press release about that, talking about the 1-900 number industry. And for people who don't know, you could call 1-900 something and get your horoscope. And it might cost 50 cents a minute. It was charged to your landline phone bill. Or you could call and speak to someone live and get advice about your pet or relationships. And it might be $1 a minute or $2 a minute. It was really big business back in the day. And this was almost 30 years ago. So when I did that press release and faxed it out, something different happened. We got picked up in the Financial Times, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and 3 telecom trade publications. And I felt, wow, everybody like really paid attention. We got a lot of orders. A lot of people saw us, got a lot of inquiries about sponsorship and advertising with us. And so it was a game changer. And everybody was like, I wonder if you can do this again. I looked at our next typical topic for a press release and tried to like flesh out the story behind it and sent it out, and we got picked up again. Not as many that time, but as we did this, we routinely got picked up in 2 to 4 places almost every time we sent a release, and sometimes as many as 10 places. I realized journalists like to follow a story arc. And while we had data, which is important and should have given us an edge, it wasn't enough without the story. So that's what got me started. And at the same time, journalists would call and say, hey, in the future, could you email instead of faxing? I'm like, yes, save me a day of programming a fax machine. I'll definitely do that. And so I did that. I sent it out, and again, we got picked up. And I just said, I could be emailing on behalf of lots of people. Email is so much easy and it just goes out there. So what I did was I decided I'm going to start building my own Rolodex for all journals. And I would spend a lot of time at that juncture. It's probably the late 1990s, like 96, 97. I would just go into bulletin boards, which were really popular at the time. And I would network with journalists and say, hey, would it be okay if I sent you press releases and story pitches on behalf of clients? They're like, as long as you follow my beat, go for it. So I spent over a year talking to these journalists. And so when I launched in 1998, I had about 10,000 journalists in my database. And I was just a matchmaker, sending releases as well as pitches directly to these journalists. And my clients were getting picked up, and it was very successful. I really felt like this is what I want to do. I want to help small businesses and entrepreneurs. So my price points were really low. I wasn't interested in building a PR firm or dealing with people who were having to spend tens of thousands of dollars, because I just saw it work for us for my job. And I felt like I could do this for others. What evolved over time is PR Newswire reached out to us at eReleases and said they liked what we were doing and would we consider sending our releases through them. And at the time, they charged over $1,500 to move a press release nationally. And I was charging my clients about $300. I didn't think we'd ever come to a way to work together, but we did. Every release today goes out nationally through PR Newswire, and you don't have to pay anything close to $1,600 plus dollars, which is the going rate today to go out nationally with them for a 600-word press release. One of the things that we discovered when talking was that they have an overnight editorial team, and they don't do much, but they have to be there in case there's breaking news or you want to get something out to the Asian markets. And they just sit idle for hours. I said, I could start scheduling my press releases for next day distribution instead of immediate distribution. And your people could set them up overnight, because taking a press release isn't just copy and pasting and hitting send. It really is setting it up in the wire and making sure that there's the headline, the dateline, all of these certain things in the proper format, and getting it into that actual infrastructure. I told them it would cost them nothing. There'd be zero labor attached to my releases. And they found that very attractive. So I've been doing that and been helping journalists get these great releases and helping my clients get access to these journalists. And having access to the wire has been a real game changer for my clients. My original business of emailing has been destroyed because of what's happened with the media landscape. There's these media databases that you can buy or license for as little as $8,000, on up to $20,000. And people are sending off target emails because it doesn't cost anything extra. You just spent $20,000 on a media database. And if you look at it, you feel like, oh, we're a golf club company. There's only like 2,000 golf journalists in there. They start talking themselves into sending to bankers and financial analysts and people like that by saying, hey, people in the banking and business world, they buy golf clubs. But the truth is, a financial analyst is never going to write about golf clubs. And yet you have just sent numerous releases to these
Right.
people.
So it's a wasted audience.
Yes. So the email inbox of journalists is under a lot of stress at the moment. So I'm very fortunate that we pivoted and all of our releases are predominantly through the newswire, through PR Newswire.
Cool. Great backstory, Mickey. For our audience that may not understand the benefits of writing a proper press release, how to go about it, as you said, sending out the story, what qualifies as a good press release, and how can people leverage that to get awareness for their business, and then how they can utilize your platform to get that message out.
Sure. So at the end of the day, I say try to be newsworthy, but anything you put out, try to tell an interesting story. So we get a lot of product launch press releases, and it's usually here's a product, here's a list of features. Sometimes they're just bullets. And then here's a page to learn more and buy. There's no story there. And for a journalist to follow a story arc, they'll see that and see that there's nothing that they could really develop, be intriguing or a story that they would want to share with their audience. The great way to incorporate a story is take a use case study. Someone beta tested or used your product and share their experience. This company was losing 7% a year, and this was their fourth year in business. They utilized, let's say it's a logistics software solution. And at the end of a 120-day trial, they are projected to have a 5% net profit this year for the first time. And you could actually talk about how meaningful that is because in your industry, say transportation industry, 67% of companies fail in their first 5 years because they don't achieve profitability. So you've really
Sure.
shown the stakes of why your product or solution is important. And you told that story about this one person, this one client and how they used it and put a quote in there by them saying how easy it was to use or how it kept them on task when they were invoicing clients so that every transaction was profitable for them. That's a really great way to build a little story in there that would make it more interesting to the audience. And that's really what a journalist is. They're a gatekeeper of their audience, and they have to decide, is this press release, the story behind this press release, going to either intrigue or educate or entertain their audience? And hopefully it does a mixture of all of those things.
I remember using your platform, I think it was 99 or 2000. I was in charge of global sales and marketing for a software company, and the product was called Hamworks, and it's a machining NC programming software. And I coined the term machining intelligence, MI. Today, AI is like the big thing, but this is decades ago. And what the software did was based upon geometric shapes, it would recognize out of the solid model and recommend toolpaths so the NC programmer didn't have to do it. It did it all automatically based upon size, shape, depth, material type, and all that stuff. And I put out a press release about this new technology. And I did share a story of a customer that was utilizing it, was beta testing it, and that got picked up. And that got shared. That in turn got a couple publications that reached out and said, we'd like to write a story on this. They started asking me if I put ads in their publication. And so I turned around and says, yeah, I'll put an ad in your publication, but I want a story. So they would put a multi-page story, and there's nothing more powerful than a third party sharing a story about your business or a service or a product that you've got. That gives it legitimacy and helps it take off.
Yeah, it is like social proof or even almost an implied endorsement when this third party, this journalist writes about you. It's a huge credibility boost. And even more importantly, people see it as a signal of trust. When they see an ad, they don't have the signal of trust, but when they read about you in an article, they'll be like, wow, this publication that I like and I read has chosen to write about them. Obviously, they're legitimate Obviously, they're on to something. They're,
And I'm going to
you know,
call them.
yep. And so people want to do business with people they read about. I have read about many Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaigns, and I find myself pulling out my credit card and backing them, often knowing that I really have no desire for the actual product. I just saw that it was affordable, and I enjoyed the story of how this little person went out there and said to the companies, "Hey, could you just make this one little tweak to your product? It's exactly what I need." And they're all like, "No." And he talks to other people, and they're like, "Oh, we would all love to have that." He's, "You sure you want to do it?" They're like, "No." And he goes, "I guess I just have to do it myself." You share their journey and the process of what it takes to make a product, and you're rooting for them. As an entrepreneur, I think I see myself just time and time again backing people just because I want to see them succeed. It is that sort of rapport and emotional response that we have when we read about someone in an article. And it's the same reason I think that everybody that appears on Shark Tank often opens with their own story. And it's often sharing a vulnerability that they got laid off or they lost a loved one. And they had this hobby in high school and they were wondering if they could revisit that and maybe make a business around it, and just really things that are just very human. It's because we want to relate to other people. We don't want to relate to logos and businesses. We want to relate to individuals. I think that's the real power and why almost everybody that appears on Shark Tank opens that way. About a third of the people that appear on Shark Tank usually use us to send a press release announcing that their episode's going to air and share a little bit about them because the producers recommend that they do a press release. So we see a lot of them. And the ones that are really smart come back and they do a really big PR campaign often before they start paid advertising. I saw it with Manscaped. I saw it with Squatty Potty, several of their customers who come in and they want to build a base of media pickup. And they
Right.
know that being on Shark Tank, you have that footage, you have that link, but you have these other articles that they get picked up in, and all of a sudden they're going to convert at a much higher rate, and their cost per acquisition is going to go down.
Creating awareness. Really, what you're doing is you're creating awareness that you exist and you're out there. So then when the rest of it follows the advertising, it's, oh, I've heard of that somewhere. And then it goes from there.
Yeah,
So
there are
let's talk
people who
about
say that people won't buy with you until they've seen you 6, 7, 8
eight
times,
times. Right.
and so it is that awareness, getting it out there, and the media is one of the easiest ways to do that.
Great insight. So, Mickey, let's talk about how, let's say, a solopreneur or a small to mid-sized business can leverage e-releases by putting out a press release that will in turn help them transform some of their stakeholders into superfans.
Sure. So I think that I talked about this emotional response we have to the advertising.
Right.
The great thing about it is it brings in new customers that are often very loyal to you, and they usually don't price shop. They usually want to do business with you, and often they're looking for you to give them a reason not to. They really are in switched on. They want to do business with you. There's also, you take that media mention, that URL to the news article, and you share it with your leads and put it in front of them. You share it on social media. You share it with your own customers. If you have a customer newsletter, you incorporate it in there, get that in front of them. Because what you'll find is the people that are your leads, if you have, say, a 15% conversion rate and you put earned media in front of them, you'll often find that convert, like maybe 20, 25% of your leads now convert. And you put it in front of your customers, maybe you find that each year you lose 20% of your customers. That's the churn rate. All of a sudden your churn rate will reduce because people are like, hey, weren't we supposed to shop vendors every 4 years? And they're like, hey, this year we don't have to. Look at this article. Oh man, we were the right company. They see that, they get
Reinforcement.
energized. Yes,
It's
they decide they don't need to shop around this year. And so they're going to stick with you. And so the same thing happens when just get this stuff picked up and out there. But you also have to do the job of sharing it with your own leads and your own customers, because that's really valuable. I have a offline carpet company in New Jersey who did a PR campaign with me. And I told them that I really thought that they should save their money, but they were very insistent. And so I told them that the easiest media they could get after talking with them, because they're basically a commodity business, is probably industry pickup, trade publications, which, as I pointed out, their clients do not read. trade publications. Their customers do not read these. But I said they are huge credibility indicators. We did that. We got picked up at the end of a year. They had about 30 clips. They did get picked up in their local newspaper and New Jersey Magazine, which is a very high-end consumer magazine that was really a perfect fit for them. But the rest of those clips were all industry publications. But what they did is they put them all together in a brag book. And every time they'd go give a consultation to someone in their home, they would open that and say, hey, we may not come in the cheapest, but we recognize nationally. Here we are in Floor Covering Today. Here we are in Floor Trade Weekly, all these different places.
Gives you that you're a somebody company.
They started converting 17% more of those consultations. And that's
Wow.
almost one out of every 5 consultation they were previously losing, they were now winning. And from a perspective of someone who does 6 or 7 measurings a day and consultations, that's a really big win for them. All just this adding 2 minutes to the conversation of opening the book and just showing them. They said no one ever read the articles. They just looked at the headlines. They looked at them. That signal of trust was enough to get them to convert almost 20% better. So that's really powerful. And that continues to work time and time again over time. It is a asset that you build when you get this sort of recognition and credibility. And it's something that you can really grow with.
Let's look at an employee or team member goes above and beyond for the company and lands a big opportunity, for example, or solves a huge problem. I think putting out a press release edifying that individual, it shows one that you care as an owner of the company, you care about your team. That person that got edified is going to feel like a rock star. So he's going to become a super fan of the company. They're going to tell everybody about the fact that they got put out into a press release. It's going to energize the rest of the team because they're going to want to be the ones get put out that PR. And that creates what I call a total experience where you're really hitting all the people in the company. For example, you got a supplier that came through for a particular schedule and they went above and beyond to deliver this thing for you. You should take the time to recognize them. I think your platform is a great platform to be able to do that because now you're giving them national visibility. And that's just going to attract more business for them, and they're going to become your super fan. So this whole thing, your platform can be utilized, as you were mentioning earlier, but you can really, I think, take it to a whole nother level to really bring more than credibility, but make yourself as an organization that gives gratitude to contributors to make you successful.
Going back to that, it's story-based. And here you've talked about a story, memorialize the story that's coming out of your company. Anytime you do that, those are moments that the media loves. And
Right.
I see a lot of charities who do releases about so much was raised or a company that gave money to a charity. I hate to say it, but no one really cares about those and they generally don't get picked up. And so I always tell people, make sure you get people's permission to do this, but share the experiences, the transformations you've made. We help like 40,000 people a year. I was like, people only care about the individual. Share one person's story. Take someone and share that story. And the ones that do very well, I get it that from the standpoint of the charity, you're wanting to share that you're helping a lot. But the best way to show that is to showcase and put the spotlight on an individual that you've transformed their life and what
Right.
you've done to them. Because again, it breaks it down to human interest and we care about individuals. And we're not discounting any of the good that you do in aggregate, but we need to see it individually and personalized. Be mindful of the stories that you have within your company, the things that you do, the employees, how a product is discovered or created, even a service might be because someone was like really tired of telling no to everybody who answers saying, do you do this? Or like, no, we don't do that. No one does that. Maybe we should be doing that because then we could be answering yes to these calls. But all the other people out there who have always wondered, well, is there anyone that could do this? We now do that. And so sometimes there can be really just interesting stories about individuals and how they have contributed and how a company listened and incorporated that and built a product or service as a result. Like you said, it really is going to make that person a super fan, that employee, but it's also going to show the market that you are a business that listens and pays
Right.
attention and is responsive. Because one of the things that happens as businesses get bigger is they listen less and care less about other people's experiences. They're the companies that when someone goes to and says, "Could you make this little tweak to your product? Because it'd be perfect for a whole subsegment of people," and they say no because they're just big and callous. Then you have people that go out and create Kickstarters and Indiegogos, and now a few years later, they're going to be competing, and you're going to wish that you had listened.
One of the things I got, Mickey, on that story is you saying to write something about an actual situation and how you help somebody or a business or whatever. I've got a saying is that to be terrific, you need to be specific. And if you're specific, you'll be terrific. So the meaning of that is just like you said, if we help 40,000 people, that's wonderful. But let's share that specific story about that one individual or that one account, that one business that you helped transform their profitability, their growth, or a partnership where you worked with one another, two different companies teamed up together to land an account and you both did it. And here's the story of what you guys went through to make that happen. Those are things that need to be shared. You can't buy that kind of marketing because, like you just said earlier, you put that out, that gets picked up, and now you've got all these other platforms marketing this for you at no cost. You paid for it one time through your platform, and now all these people are pushing it out onto their platforms and their media. It's not costing you anything.
It's completely free, and you would be shocked at the number of outlets that love to spotlight these things. The media does not love to cover Google's and Microsoft and Apple's of the world. They have to. It's part of what they do. But any media that I've talked to says that what drives the number of shares and views of an article, and that's one of the two big metrics that they use for online, is the number of people who click on the share button and the number of people who actually view it. They get the most views and shares when they spotlight a new product or service or company, a new discovery. Often those are going to be the smaller companies, the solopreneurs, the side hustle, the person who's still got a full-time job, but they're trying to create something on the side, a product or service. A lot of people feel like I'm just not big enough yet to get media attention. You being small is a huge advantage because journalists get a kick out of being seen as curators. And when they profile someone that no one knows about, that's when they get the accolades with a lot of shares and a lot of views from people who don't know about you. So being small and unknown is not a detract when it comes to media attention. It's actually a superpower, and it's something that you can utilize because they know that the larger companies can afford to pay for advertising, but the small ones, they need to be seen and viewed and have people appreciate them. And journalists are very willing to do that.
Yeah, eReleases is a great platform to help people play at the level of the big dogs without having to spend big dog money. That's really the advantage that you provide with your platform is that somebody just starting out with their business and has got a clever idea, clever way of doing something, it's a service or a product, they can leverage your platform to get the word out. And then that's just a multiplier factor. If it's written in a good, as we talked, into a story where people will pick that up and share it, then that's significantly more effective than spending marketing on ads on various platforms.
It is. And as I've told people, they always ask, how does the ROI work with PR? And I'm like, it works very frustratingly. You can have a press release do well, get earned media, and the phones don't ring much. But you could also have the inverse, where I had one person do their first release with us. I think they were just an assistant to the president. And he called and said, yeah, I'm supposed to do a press release. Walk me through this. So we worked together. I actually helped him write it because I really feel like individuals can write their own press releases. Sometimes they need a little help. So I gave him a little bit of assistance and reviewed it and made some suggestions. It was for a company that makes waste management facilities. They do the whole thing. They build an entire waste management facility. often for cities. And they got picked up in, I think, Waste Management News, trade publication. And I heard from that guy a few months later, and he says, I got a big bonus because of you. And I was like, oh, tell me about it. So they got contacted by someone in Australia, and they said, hey, you build these facilities over here? And they go, yeah, we often will move stuff by barges and boat, even to get around different parts of the US. And so we have done stuff to Europe and Africa, and we could certainly do to Australia. We are now building three municipalities' waste management systems in Australia. And this is like many tens of millions of dollars. And they're just like, all from this one press release.
A game changer. It's a total game changer. I grew that product from zero in a 3-year window. I started in 97. I used your platform, I'm pretty sure 99 or 2000. And I grew that product. I left the company after 3 years. I set up 60 resellers around the world. And I grew that product from 0 to 3 million in a 3-year window. The highest end package of that product was 10 grand. We were giving 50% margin to our resellers all over the world.
So the telecom company that I started as employee number 3, they're still in business today. When I started, they published their yearly data for $600. Today, it's over $20,000 a year. So what happened is, with the amount of publicity that they've had and the recognition that they have in the industry, people know that if you want telecom data, this is the only place you can go to. And they do have a monopoly on the data that they have, because they started originally with a partnership with the ITU. And so there was a lot of trust there. And so these telecom companies don't like giving their data to a lot of people, because their competitors could use it in other markets, other countries. And so they publish it in aggregate, and they have a trust factor. But because of that, they can charge such a huge premium. And the publicity and PR that they got allowed them to be recognized and to have a reputation and to be seen so highly within the industry. Every time they do a release later, there are people waiting to pounce on their latest press release, because they go, oh, yes, they always have great data and great stories. So that's really amazing.
So, Mickey, how can people utilize eReleases? Because it's eReleases.com, right?
Correct.
So how can people utilize, what's the best way to utilize and get the maximum benefit out of your platform?
So we distribute press releases. They go out nationally through PR Newswire, and we're a la carte. You can buy packages, but you can just come in and do one release. So we make it very affordable. There's no reason that you can't do a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases and not even spend over $3,000 or $4,000. And if anybody who has worked with a PR firm knows, if you do 6 to 8 releases over a year campaign with a PR firm, you're probably looking at many tens of thousands of dollars. And so this is something that you can do yourself. We do offer writing, but again, I feel very empowered in saying that you can really come up with a release. You can actually even use AI to help you. Now, never use AI to come up with the idea of what you're going to do. But if you use ChatGPT, you can get it to write a good release. But again, never tell it to write a release on a subject, because it'll just spit out 400 or 500, 600 words of safe material. And it's a pretty good release. It reads well. What I do is I say, hey, I have this subject picked out. Write me a outline of how you would structure a 600-word press release on it. Then I break it down element by element and say, okay, give me 5 versions of the headline that you would write for this press release. And then I might pick the one I like and say, hey, I liked this third one. Can you give me 3 variations? But in between the variations, please pause and consider, what can I do to make the next headline stronger and more unique? And whenever I tell ChatGPT to pause and to consider, it does something magical. It gives me a much better product, because I can sit there and say, give me 50 headlines, and it'll spit it out in about 45 seconds. I tell it to pause between each and to think, what could I do to make the next headline more strategic? And it might take a little bit longer, but not much longer, but the end product is so much better.
Yeah, I have fun with it because I'm talking to an individual. And what do you think about this? What's your approach? What if we twisted that and tweaked that? What's
Right.
your take? And they go, no, that's not a good idea.
Then I'll go, give me the opening paragraph to this press release. And if there's something that I feel really needed to be in that first paragraph I didn't mention, I'll tell it and say, rewrite it. And then I might say, hey, give me just 3 versions of this first paragraph and try to make them as strong as possible and pause between each and say, what could I do to make sure that the next paragraph retains that information, but I'm saying it more succinctly or powerfully. Again, I get better stuff. I may not go with the third one, but I might go with the middle one. And I do that all the way through. And you can talk this way, and you're not going to spend more than 20 minutes on a
Right.
press release.
Yeah.
And
All
yet
the
you will get
time.
a much better product if you just say, here's what I want the press release to be about. Write a 600-word press release. You will get the one that you get through my method is probably going to be 3 to 5 times better. 3 to 5 times better doesn't sound like a lot, but it's the difference between maybe getting 4 or 5 articles about you rather than none. And like 97% of press releases don't get earned media. You need to use every tool that you have. And again, AI has been trained on the 97% of press releases that don't succeed. So never ask it to come up with the idea for a press release. You always have that idea, and it's a strategic one. And to get a meaningful 6 to 8 releases and to do a PR campaign with eRelease, I recommend that people go through my masterclass that's completely free, and it's about an hour long, and it goes through the strategic types of releases that I see a lot of patterns in the 3% of releases that do get picked up. And if you follow this, you may not have every release get picked up, but if you do 6 to 8 releases and you follow the strategic pattern of these releases, you will see at least 2 to 3, maybe even 4 of those releases get real earned media that will make a difference to your business. Not every one of them may result in money, but over time, they'll increase your conversions, but you will get some that do. And we never can predict it, but sometimes we get one and the money just comes in from all these leads and customers who've discovered you. And you just have to be open to it and persistent. And when you find one that works, replicate it. When I did that carpet company I mentioned that we got about 30 media pickups, we found one version in the 5th month that worked, and we continued to follow that. And it was like, I asked them who their biggest enemy in the carpet industry was, and expecting it to be like a local competitor, they came back and said it was the big box home improvement stores. And we did a David versus Goliath approach with how they have to compete against the, Home Depots and Lowe's of the world. And that resonated with the floor trade publications. They couldn't get enough of that angles, but it was all very similar, all with that same theme. And we got picked up again and again. At the end of it, it's like 28 trade publications picked it up, or 28 articles in the trade publications, as well as the New Jersey Magazine and the newspaper.
He's definitely a super fan of your system.
Yes, absolutely. And that free masterclass that I mentioned is at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. And I share one type of press release in there that has always generated earned media. And often it's between 8 and 14 articles. And I can share briefly what it is. And it's to do an industry survey. Survey your industry right now. Take their temperature on various topics, some that might be trending, some that might just be in your marketplace. Are there concerns about AI replacing your job? Do people have fears like that? Or are people having workplace issues like culture issues because people don't want to work the same way they did pre-pandemic? People want to work hybrid or work from home. And so you can ask really specific questions about things. If you were going to a conference or trade show, what are things you would ask other people? Have you noticed this? And often these are the issues that nobody in your trade industry has written about yet. So that's why you'd ask them like, hey, have you noticed this going on in the industry? Ask those questions because it might be right for you to put that in front of your industry. And when we do a press release,
and then you position yourself as a thought leader,
right?
and all of a sudden your peers are going, "Wow, man, this guy's got or this gal's got their game on,"
Right.
and your peers are becoming your super fans in a sense because you're looked at as a thought leader.
And I break down in that masterclass how to structure it with SurveyMonkey. I like 4 questions per page. But even more importantly, you do not have to have your own Rolodex of people in your industry to do a survey. There are so many independent and small trade associations in every industry, and they are begging for someone to come and say, hey, would you be willing to send this survey out In exchange for that, I will mention you in the press release I will be issuing in a couple weeks over PR Newswire. No one knows about them. They are very loyal. They have loyal members, but they're usually pretty small, 600 members to maybe a couple thousand members at most, but they're in every industry. I had someone point out in the podcast of mine saying, Mickey, in the PR industry, that's the one exception because there's only Public Relations Society of America. And I'm like, just to let you know, there's over 470 other trade associations in the United States alone dedicated to public relations. And she was shocked. And I'm like, it's because they get all the media attention. These others don't. So when you approach them like this, they're willing to send that to their members because they want to get some media attention
Right.
themselves. And if you
Exactly.
say you'll mention them in a press release, they see it as a win. And
Right.
that's all you have to do. And then you're going to provide the analysis from the survey. You're going to provide an amazing quote of why you felt the numbers skewed in a particular way on the biggest issue. And you really want to focus the press release on that one big aha moment. What's going to be the most shocking or surprising thing from this survey or poll? And it really is as simple as that. And everybody that's followed my method has generally gotten between 8, 14 articles. And the least I've ever had anyone get is 4. And they were in a very specialized biometrics field. And they were ecstatic. They said, everybody that I think could write about us has. It's amazing. They were very pleased. This really does build your credibility and it elevates you. When you author a survey, you are seen as someone who really highly knows your industry, whether you do or not. It's just a matter of claiming that authority, getting that out there.
Cool. Mickey, as we're closing out here, we're approaching the up to the hour here. Tell a little bit of how people can find you. And you've already mentioned your free offer here, the eReleases /plan, which sounds like a great course. I think I'm going to take it myself to refresh myself. Been a while since I've used the platform, but with my stuff, I can definitely leverage that. But how can people find you?
Sure. So the website's eReleases.com. All of our social media is on the lower right of the page, including my personal LinkedIn, which is the only social media I really do. We have a managing editor and 5 additional editors that can assist you during the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. If you write a release and you want us to take a look at it or you have questions, feel free to just email us. Give us a couple business days to get back to you with the ideas for improvement and some thoughtful interactions, but feel free to lean on us. We help people every day with their first PR campaign. And if it seems daunting, it doesn't have to be. And we're there to hold your hand the entire way. And again, that masterclass is at eReleases.com/plan. And it's completely free. And it's not a giant course that's 14 hours long. It's less than an hour-long video because I remembered that the last class I paid for, I logged in and saw it was over 40 hours of videos. And I just don't have that kind of availability and bandwidth. So this class was about 7 hours. I reduced it and got it less than an hour. And it's very action-oriented and very practical.
Excellent. Mickey Kennedy, it's been a pleasure having you on the Business Superfans podcast. Great conversation, great insights on how to leverage press releases to build brand awareness and create superfans within all your stakeholders within your organization.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Business Superfans podcast. If you found value in our dive into creating superfans for lasting success, show some love, hit like, and subscribe for future episodes, and share with your network to spread the insights. Your support is everything and fuels more content to boost your business success. Stay tuned, superfans superstars. Thank you for tuning in to today's Business Superfans podcast. If our exploration of creating superfans for lasting success struck a chord with you, show some love. Like us, subscribe for future episodes, and share with your network to spread the wisdom. Your support fuels us to craft more valuable content for your business success. Keep rocking, superfans superstars. Attention business owners. Are you looking to transform your employees, customers, and business allies' relationships and elevate your brand to new heights? Join the Business Superfans Accelerator today. Led by me, Freddy D, this dynamic mentorship program empowers you to turn your stakeholders into passionate superfans, the ultimate brand advocates who actively promote your business. Imagine a community of dedicated supporters promoting promoting your products or services not just through word of mouth, but as proud champions of your brand. With exclusive access to monthly Q&A sessions, brainstorming opportunities, and valuable resources like online courses, playbooks, and much more, this program is designed to provide you with the tools you need for sustainable, profitable growth. Don't wait. Every moment you delay allows your competition to get ahead. Sign up now at bizsuperfans.community and start unleashing the potential of your superfans today. Your brand's transformation awaits. Let's make business growth your reality.
We hope you took away some useful knowledge from today's episode of the Business Superfans podcast. The path to success relies on taking action. So go over to businesssuperfans.com and get your hands on the book if you haven't already. Join the Accelerator community and take that first step in generating a team of passionate supporters for your business. Join us on the next episode as we continue guiding you on your journey to achieve flourishing success in business.